Here I'm going to go over some details about the biology field trip to Hammonasset Beach. I'm going to go over some of the basic structure of the field trip and also some questions you should be asking yourself and looking at answering coming away from this field trip. So the first part is it is Hammonasset State Park. This is the address. We're going to be parking in the main parking lot here, walking down this large walkway to the main pavilion and continuing out from there. Hammonasset State Park is Connecticut's largest shoreline park with over 2 miles of beach to enjoy. We won't be visiting all of it. We're going to be focusing mainly from here starting, working to sand dunes, and working basically over to this area here in the Loop region. It first opened to the public in July 18th, 1920. It was used as an army reservation on the federal government during World War II, so it does have some historic reference. And over 1 million people visit every year. So hopefully we can enjoy it and be able to understand some of the impacts of this area with just that volume of people that visit the area. So just some quick words of caution just to consider. Please carry out what you carry in, regardless of what that is related to food or anything else that you bring. Be respectful of others in the environment. There may be other school groups there, even amongst your own students, and other individuals from the public that may be there. So just keep an watch out for everyone in our group and also other groups. Lastly, just make sure you watch out for poison ivy. Try to point it out here. Typically it will have green leaves, but when it first comes out, it may have this kind of reddish tones here, and that's some anthocyanin that's produced in the leaves to help protect it from the sun, help shade it there a little bit. So again, not something you want to be touching as it can cause severe itchiness and allergic reaction. Now getting to the key ideas of the field trip to keep in mind, you want to be considerate of how the individual species and ecosystem respond as the oceans become more acidic. Sadly, a trend that we are noticing here with some general global data. 2, why will rising water temperature impact the beach, and how will that affect and what will it affect? How are native and invasive species interacting with one another? Can you find any of native or invasives? What's the role that each species environment play in the carbon cycle? That's the general theme we're going to be looking at. And also, what can we do to help mitigate negative impacts? So general organization, I'm going to go through these in a little bit more detail. This gives you just an idea. When we say beach, you just think of sand. There are some rocky areas. There are some areas that have trees, and there's trails. We're revisiting a little bit of each of these major different areas. So these are some of the key questions to ask. Sand dunes, art and science, water testing, plants, animals, and salt marshes. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of these stations here. So for the sand dunes, the importance of sand dunes. Well, how do sand dunes impact the local environment? Can you define 4 unique niches found within the zones of the sandy beach area? And what's the connection between the sand dunes and hurricanes? How do they protect the beach? How could they, if they become damaged, how could that be a threat? Things, again, 3 key questions to consider when looking at sand dunes. Moving on to blending art and science. Well, how does art and science fuse together? And what made you select a story or drawing that you created at this station? So just have some supporting reasons for that. Water testing station, can you identify the type of the tests that were performed? What were the results found, or what was the data provided to you? And how does this provide information in the area that cannot simply be seen in an image? Because I have a picture here of the water. This is at Hammonasset Beach. What does the data say? What is the result of the testing? Some key points to remember. Remember the pH scale. 7 is neutral. Under 7 is considered acidic. Over 7 is considered basic on our chart. 0 to 14 is the scale. Bromoethyl blue solution, may have used this in a lab of looking at respiration rate, is a pH indicator, and carbon dioxide in water will result in carbonic acid formation, reducing the pH. Plants living at the beach. What are some plants that are able to survive in the beach environment? If you're walking on a trail, look for tag number 4 next to a large rock and a bench. Why are there different colored algae? We can see here of a rock with some green, some brown. Why are there different colors? Why do they exist? And consider the question, a plant at the beach may have genetics to grow 10 feet tall, but at maturity the phenotype is only 3 feet tall. What stresses may be on the plant so it does not reach its full genetic potential? So be thinking and considering that question. Then we go into the animal hunt. It's at the water's edge, and if you've been in my classroom, you might recognize this image. It is on the wall. I want to consider what animals can you find? How does the tide impact your ability to find animals, and what are tides? How does acidification affect the shells and skeletons of sea life? I got a good link you might want to look at here. And can you fully classify one animal starting with the domain, the kingdom, then going to phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species for just one of the animals that you are or someone is able to find at the beach? The value of salt marshes. Why are salt marshes important? If we do not have salt marshes, what would be the negative impacts in the local ecosystem? From a bird's perspective, identify at least 4 reasons why salt marshes are important. And here's again images from Hammonasset Beach. Again, those resounding questions we want to be thinking about. How will individual species and ecosystems respond as oceans become more acidic? What is ocean acidification? Why is this happening? What are some ways individual species might respond to ocean acidification? How will the lowering of ocean's water's pH impact the ability of ocean to store carbon in deep sea sediments? What can be done to reduce this change? Again, things we want to be considering as overarching themes amongst all stations. In addition, why will rising water temperature impact the beach? How will this impact current species in place and the potential spread of invasive species? What impact does warmer surface temperature have on ocean storms? What can be done to reduce the negative impacts? And again, a good link here and some data provided with you on this slide. Also, how are native and invasive species interacting? How is an invasive species defined? What can be the long-term impacts of invasive species? What are some examples of native and invasive species found at the beach? And again, a great link here to the Connecticut website. The role of species environment play in the carbon cycle. So it kind of give you a brief overview here of the carbon cycle. The cycle of carbon involves a few different forms of carbon. However, what role does carbon dioxide play in the carbon cycle? So look at that molecule. How does that interact with plants and animals? What role do plants and animals play in this cycle as well as human impacts and results of fossil fuel burning? Last, we want to kind of end this on a positive note. What can we do to help? When we look in the mirror, can we be proud? What are some activities that can contribute to the acidification of oceans? We want to be mindful of that. And what actions can we do to reduce the negative impacts on the environment? Some good information provided here. And very lastly, in no particular order, some quality resources that might help you address some of these questions and also provide some great background on the beach. So again, just kind of that overview of the biology field trip to Hammonasset Beach. In the description, there is the link to all the images that I used as well as the slides if you wanted to print those out. Hope you have a fun time and are able to learn something and make a connection to the study of life.